Welcome back, everybody, to another stud story. Today we're going to talk about, in my opinion, one of the great wrestlers of all time. Probably deserved to be world champion for some organization, maybe several of them, as a matter of fact. He was that good. We're going to talk about Johnny Valentine. And Johnny Valentine, the first time I ever wrestled him was in 1973, and I've been wrestling for 3 years. Johnny Valentine was feared not only by people in the crowd, but actually by wrestlers themselves because of the style he wrestled. He didn't do a lot of high spots. He didn't believe in anything much but wrestling, and everything he did, he made look real. And that's why a lot of guys didn't like to work with him, is because he was too real. I mean, he hurt you a lot of times, and he did it because he wanted to. He wanted to be a wrestler of his own style and respected for being a wrestler. He used to have a saying that you may not believe in wrestling, but you'll sure believe in me. And he pretty much made wrestlers feel that way in the ring, and the fans definitely believed him. I wrestled him a lot in '73 in Florida. I was at that point the Florida heavyweight champion. I was the Southern heavyweight champion in '73 down in Florida too. Had that belt for a little while, and so I worked with Valentine a lot. My brother was working in the territory with me at the same time, and he saw a whole lot of matches. And another thing was rare about Valentine is a lot of guys didn't like to have long matches, especially they didn't want to go past 30 minutes. Johnny Valentine's opinion was that he couldn't have a great match in less than 30 minutes. He excelled at having hour matches. The Broadway matches were his greatest matches. And he probably 90% of his matches were 45 minutes or longer. So he not only wore you out, he beat you to pieces while he was wearing you out in those matches. And he did not do a lot of high spots. He wasn't. There was no leapfrogs and drop downs and tackles and high flying drop kicks, all that stuff. It just didn't happen much in Valentine matches. He would ground you. He liked to get that front face lock. He loved to get a headlock. He'd put you in a hold, and sometimes you'd fight to get out of a hold for 30 minutes. And that sounds a little strange to people out there in today's style of wrestling. They just can't imagine that type of match in which, that you would say, oh, that had to be boring as heck. Well, the deal was with Johnny Valentine is when you had these matches and he got you in that front face lock and he just got you down on your belly, and you fought like crazy to get out, and you'd almost get away, and he'd take you back down, then he'd shoot you out on the floor. Then when you got up on the apron of the ring, he'd turn you around backwards, he'd grab you by the chin, he'd bend you back over the ropes, and he'd take that big hammer, that hand up there, and he would bring it down across your chest. Everybody in the arena would go, ooh. It was like, everybody believed what he did. He had that style. Nobody else could do it, and he just did it every night after night after night. And after 20, 30 minutes, you'd been down, and when you finally got out of one of those holes and you started making a comeback, that building would stand up every night, every time, because he had that heat built so good in his matches. So my brother watched it night after night, and then I remember one night we were coming home from somewhere. We wrestled in Orlando or wherever it was, and he says, Ron, he goes, hey, how do you do it? How do you take those matches? I mean, he says, it looks like he just beat you to death. He just pounded you, and wow. How can you deal with it? And so I kind of realized that he was as convinced as everybody else as to how tough Johnny Valentine was. So he said, I hope I never have to work with him. He goes, I hope they never book me against him. I don't think I could work with him. And so we went into TV. Louis Tillett was the booker. And Louis told me and Rob, he says, you're on TV today in a tag match. And Rob says, yeah, Rob always had a, loud, fun attitude. We're in there, all the guys, hey, it's a whole big party. And he says to Louis, well, who are we wrestling? And Louis says, you're wrestling Buddy Colt and Johnny Valentine. And my brother that killed his day. And so he's dropped his head like, oh my God. Then he got me off the side. What's he going to do? I said, I don't know, man. He'll pound you a little bit, I'm sure, So he'd seen all of this for months. Me and Valentine at it for 6 or 8 months, probably 3 times a week together. And he had seen a lot of those matches. So he knew kind of what was going to happen. So Valentine shot him out. I told him, I said, Valentine has a way of, he'll grab your trunks, and when he's going to do something with you, he'll give you the office, what we called in wrestling the office. He would give you a couple of jabs in the belly with his thumb to let you know something bad's coming. So Rob said, oh, I hope he don't do me that today on TV. I said, and so then, I wanted to have some fun. So I went Rob was off messing around with somebody else, and I found Johnny Valentine and Buddy Colt, and I told him the deal. I said, Rob's scared to death of Valentine to Johnny. And I said, Johnny pounded him good, man. So Johnny had a big laugh about it. So we went out to the ring, and when we got in the ring, it wasn't too long before Johnny was in there with Rob. And I could tell Johnny, Rob had just gotten pounded inside the ring, and he got up to his feet, and I saw Valentine grab his stomach, and he gave him the old office, and he shot him straight through the ropes out on the concrete. And then I knew what was coming. And so did Rob. He had seen it enough to me. And so when Rob climbed back up on the apron, Valentine grabbed him. He turned him around. He grabbed him by the chin. He bent him way back over the ropes. And he brought that big old hammer up there. And when he brought it down, Rob threw his hands over his chest to block the move. And Buddy Colt was in the far corner, and I couldn't hardly keep from laughing at him. Me and him were looking at each other, and he was like, oh gosh, man. So and then Valentine grabbed his hands, and he peeled his hands back off of him, and he got that big hammer ready. And Rob did it to him again, covered himself up again. So there was a big laugh. I mean, and that wasn't just unusual with my brother. There was a whole lot of people that did not like to wrestle with Valentine. One more quick story about him. We're wrestling in Jacksonville. We've been wrestling together for months, and he took me off into the dressing room, and he says, I want you to try a new punch tonight. And I said, well, okay, yeah. I mean, well, what do you think? What do you want me to do? Well, I want you to do this. And he showed me. And now, it was one thing when you're in the middle of a match and you're already warmed up and some guy hits you upside the head pretty hard. You can deal with it pretty good. But in a dressing room, when you're cold and you've not done anything, he says, I want you to hit me like this. And he took his hand and put it on my forehead, and he brought his arm back. I've never seen him hit anybody like this. And he hit me upside the head, right below the ear, on the neck, so hard that, it's like, wow. I didn't say anything, but, he says to me in the dressing room, he says, do you have it? Can you do that? And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. Yeah, sure can. And it was the only time I ever saw any pain from Johnny Valentine. But in the match that night, we got it. He kept me down for 30, 45 minutes, front face lock, headlock, whatever it was. And then he finally, he said, okay, it's time. Show me that punch, he says. He tells me that. Hit me with the punch. And so he was in the corner. I had him in the corner. And I reared back, and wow, I mean, I blasted him. It didn't hit him in the neck. It hit him more upside the head. It covered one ear. I'm surprised it didn't bust his eardrum. And it rocked him. His head rocked back, boys, like, wow, whoa, whoa, whoa. And and then he says he had guts enough. He says, "Give me another one." And the second one was worse than the first one. And I must have hit him with 3 or 4 of those. And I remember very clearly after. And he didn't ever go down. He didn't go down. I think it hurt him so bad he forgot to take a bump. And after about 3 or 4 of them, he kind of grabbed me in the front face lock, and he says, "Go back to your working punch." So he said, in other words, don't hit me with that anymore. But wow, I really love working with Johnny Valentine. He was a classic wrestler, as good as any wrestler that I'd ever worked with. And I think he could have been a world champion for the NWA, for AWA, any organization. I can't believe he never won any world title. And he may have. I'm not sure. I never followed his career enough to know where all he'd been and what all he'd done. But in my opinion, he was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and a nightmare to find out when you got there who you had that night. For most guys, it was a true nightmare to find out that they were going to be looking across the ring at Johnny Valentine.